All right, hello again, Ling 201. We're back for more phonetics today. And what I want to walk you through today is the system, or basically the inventory of English phoneme symbols that we're going to use in phonetic transcription of English. So there's a couple of notes before we actually get into this. One is that I want you to give a shot at this quick write number 12. This is a quick write which we normally do in class with partners. So you just find somebody sitting next to you and then try to get them to say a particular word without saying exactly what the word is, and instead you get them to you try to describe it to them in terms of how they're moving their mouth around to say the various sounds. That will sort of make more sense when we have our next lecture, where we go through the different properties of the sounds, the different articulations or gestures you use to produce them. That gives you some practice, though, hopefully, in terms of just thinking about what you're doing with your mouth when you produce these sounds. And also, hopefully, if you've done the reading in the textbook, then you'll kind of have a leg up on this sort of exercise, both in terms of explaining to a partner how to say what to say, and then also understanding what somebody else is telling you to do with your articulators when you speak. So the tricky part of this is that we're in the weird coronavirus situation still, so we can't have a classroom in the normal sense. You can do this however you want to, though. You can do it with somebody you're living with or whoever, family, friends, that are willing to talk to you in any situation, and you can do it remotely over Skype or Zoom or what have you too, as long as the other person doesn't know what word you're trying to get them to say before you actually say it. So actually you should probably just close that, because if you want to do that with somebody from the class, I don't want to give the words away. There's 3 different words, though, in the quick write. You can pick whichever one you like best and see if you can get somebody to say that without actually saying to them what the word is itself. So it's a bit like phonetics charades, I guess you could say, or Pictionary, whatever game you prefer. So give that a shot. Let me know how it goes. Otherwise, we're going to walk through the system of English phonemes today. This is a lecture which is relatively short in terms of the number of slides in the lecture. And normally for this lecture, I will write all the symbols on the board so you get kind of a sense of how to write them, and you can write them down as well. Normally, we learn how to write these in class, but it's a little tricky to do that virtually as well. So I'm just going to present them to you in pre-existing digital form so you can see what they look like. But it's not a bad idea to kind of practice writing these, both because you'll remember them a little bit better, and then also you can, write them out at any point in the future. If you want to, that's a useful skill to have, because if you know how to transcribe something phonetically, you can kind of describe how anything in the world is said, which, believe it or not, can be useful. That being said, the one last caveat I want to mention with this lecture is that I went on at some length about the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, in the previous lecture, and we are learning the IPA, but we're learning kind of a little bit of an idiosyncratic version of it based on the textbook. So this is not going to match up exactly what you would find in the official version of the IPA, because it's a little more tuned to English, or maybe specifically the Canadian English variety that most of us speak, or maybe most of you speak. So keep that in mind. It's not a bad thing overall, though, and I'll kind of highlight if there's any differences that you need to be aware of. But otherwise, I just want you to learn this particular system. So there's, I think, 38 symbols here that we're going to have to learn. They all represent one sound, and always the same sound in terms of its phonetic quality as we speak it. There are different sets of symbols, though. I'm going to walk you through them in groupings in terms of how they relate to sort of the way we normally write that sound in English. So, as I said, there's 38 symbols or phonemes that we need to learn all together. Almost half of those symbols sort of mean the same thing in the IPA as they mean in English spelling normally. And this is the first set of 16. I've tried to put these all into one giant minimal set, or conglomeration of minimal pairs, so that you can see that they're all contrasting with each other in kind of the same phonetic context. And I'll just walk you through them one by one. Again, normally I write these on the board so you can write them down along with me and kind of get a sense of, or maybe a better memory of what they are. But so we have the P in pot, the B in bot, the T in tot, the D in dot, the K in kit. I guess you could say COT or CAUGHT, but I'm putting this down here as the K because we spell it with the same symbol as we're going to use in the IPA. And the G in got. So another point I'll make about the K sound here for kit is that we are not going to use the C symbol, the letter C in the IPA. So just set that one aside and forget about it for this class. It's never going to come into play. It means something different in the IPA than the K sound as we normally produce it. Also, I kind of referred to like there's two different versions of the way to produce or pronounce the G symbol or the G letter in English. Whenever you see a G symbol in our phonetic transcriptions, it always means G. It's the hard version of G, not the soft version. We'll see how to transcribe that here in a second. Yeah, I'll just mention as we go that all 6 of these in this left-hand column, P, B, T, D, K, G, are called stop sounds, because you stop the flow of air as it's going through your mouth when you produce it. P, there's a brief moment there where there's no air flowing out of your mouth. When you say a P, that's why it's called a stop. Okay, in the middle here, we have as in rot. Looks like the letter R, F, fought, V, vote, S, sought, Z, zit, so on and so forth. Yeah, I will mention this particular symbol means something different in the official IPA. It's the R sound, like Spanish has. It's called a trill, technically speaking. We're going to use this symbol anyway in English, and it means the sound, rot. What a poor example of a weird sound in English. So you can rely on that. You don't have to learn anything new for it. These other 4 are technically known as fricative sounds. F, V, S, and Z. We'll see a few more of those, but basically they're sounds that involve some turbulent noise in your mouth as you produce them, like in F or Sa. The last column, M as in ma, N as in not, L as in lot, was in walk, and the H in hot. There's nothing really in common with all of these, but you don't have to worry about. You just have to know that you get these kind of for free. The M is going to mean the same thing as it usually does for English spelling, N, L, W, H, so on and so forth. Okay, those are the easy ones. Most of the symbols we're going to use, you're going to have to learn something new for them. So I'm going to walk you through this in a way that's hopefully not too painful. First of all, giving you familiar symbols which mean something different in terms of their phonetic value in the IPA. So number 17 here is the one consonantal sound that fits this description. So it's the y sound, like in yacht, and I'm still trying to stick with kind of the same minimal set here. I'm spelling it with a Y here because that's the way we normally spell this sound in English. But in transcription, we're going to spell it with this J symbol. So when you see this, what looks like a J, it's not J, it's not that sound, it's Y. And this has a nickname in the IPA. People call it Yod. This is not official, but in case you want to make a reference to this particular sound, you can call it Yod, or this symbol is Yod. Yeah, again, this is the way this sound is normally spelled in other European languages. So if you think, just off the top of my head, I can think of, a name like Sonia, which is often spelled S-O-N-J-A, that sound, or a German name like Johann, like J-O-H-A-N, is ja. Okay, that's the only consonant, like I said, that fits this description. The rest of these are vowels, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but English vowel spelling is kind of idiosyncratic because the language went through a great shift in terms of which phonetic sound matches up with which symbol in the writing system. About 600 to 400 years ago, We don't know exactly why that happened, but it did. So everything just kind of shifted around, and we have to learn something new now when we learn the IPA symbols. So this vowel, which we refer to as I in English spelling, is going to be the E sound, like in heed.
Heed.
And I'm going to turn this up a bit. I've got examples of all these.
Heed.
This one, which we normally think of as E, is going to be A.
Heed.
Like in that. However, this one's kind of funny. This one and also number 21 here. When we normally produce them in English,
Heed.
they kind of have two qualities in one sound, as it were. So they're called a diphthong. It's basically a phoneme that combines two different phones or two different specific sounds within it, and they kind of always go together. So whenever we write out a transcription of the word Heed, we've got H at the beginning, we've got D at the end, but in the middle we're going to have this diphthong, which is a combination of two symbols. It's going to be the A and the yod right after it. And to give you a sense of those two sounds within that one phoneme, I've actually split off the individual vowel parts of these utterances. So starting with this,
Heed. Heed.
I've cut out just the vowel of this first one, number 18.
E.
So that's the E part. Here's the first half of that E. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. I'll try it this way.
E.
Here's the second half.
E.
Okay, so you can hear that's the same vowel, but just because of the way we normally sort of make statements in English, he has kind of a higher pitch of his voice in the first half than the second half. But it's E in both cases, right? Let's listen to, if we can, this guy.
A.
And you'll hear the vowel quality changes in addition to the pitch of his voice from the first half to the second half. Right? And that sounds a little bit more like an E there at the end. And in fact, we can kind of contrast these two. So those are different. These will sound pretty similar. Right? So he's producing more of an E here at the tail end. It's not too inappropriate. Not that I want you to do this to transcribe it like that. We're going to transcribe it according to the system used in the book, which is with a yod there, which is sort of like a consonantal version of the E sound. So whenever you write this out, it's A like that, a diphthong, a phoneme that combines two phones. Number 20 is ah.
Hod.
And so this I've written out for the word hod. Another example which is often given for this one is the word father. So I'll just put that in here. It's that sound, the ah sound.
Hod.
That is this vowel. And the reason I'm including this as sort of a familiar symbol but a different sound is that normally this letter is pronounced as A in English, but we're not going to use it for that A sound. We're going to use it for this ah sound.
Hod.
But when we transcribe it, we're not going to transcribe it with this sort of typewriter A symbol or what a computer would normally show you with that kind of curly Q bit in it. It's rounded, a big A rounded with a little line on the side. So always write it out like that, please.
Hod.
In the IPA, this vowel actually means something slightly different, which, yeah, we'll see in a second. So we can listen to that one as well.
Hod.
That's the vowel. This is the O sound, like in bode.
Bode. Bode.
He says it a little bit further forward than maybe a Canadian would. Bruce Hayes is the speaker of this. He's a phonologist who worked for many years in California. They tend to pronounce this vowel a little bit different.
Bode.
But he does pronounce it as a diphthong, just like the A up here in 19. So we'll listen to that here in a second when we compare it to this vowel.
Hood.
Which is oo. So this one actually matches up fairly well with the way we normally pronounce this vowel sound in English. It's an O. This one, if we just saw the symbol by itself in English, we'd say it's U, but it's only going to be the oo part of that U.
Hood.
Oo.
Hood.
Without the yod in front of it. So this one
Bode.
is O.
Ooh.
That one's ooh. Give me a second. So I'm labeling this one as a diphthong, and it does a similar thing to what A does in English. So we can listen to the first and second halves of number 22 here, and we hear that it sounds like ooh in both cases. This one, number 21, starts out as O, and then it kind of goes closer to ooh at the end. So it's maybe a little subtler of a difference, but than what we heard for number 19. But we can contrast 21 and 22 in the same way as we did 18 and 19 before. And those are obviously different there, but they're going to sound more similar here. Yeah, not quite the same though. So the way we're going to transcribe this one is with an O and a W symbol after it. O. You don't say O, you say O. Where I grew up, there were some people in Minnesota who would say bode, but I don't think a whole lot of Canadians say it that way. You're probably more likely to say it bode with that diphthong kind of at the end of it. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about those. I've got a few examples of unfamiliar IPA symbols for consonants. So these are symbols which do not exist in English, and you just have to learn what sounds they represent. There's not too many of them though, so hopefully that won't be too tricky. But that's another thing I'm going to have to say about this unit in phonetics is that there's just going to be a lot of memorization basically in order to learn the system. There's no other way around it. You got to simply just learn this stuff. And then it'll come in handy when we start to do analysis with it, when we start learning phonology in the next section. So number 23 here is the sound at the beginning of a word like thought. Th. It's written out like a vertical oval with a horizontal line through the middle. That is the Greek letter theta, which is why this symbol has the nickname theta. And it represents the same thing as it does in Greek, which is th, that sound, th. You can contrast that with the th sound in the word though, which we're going to write with this symbol. You can kind of imagine it's like a D that has the vertical line kind of bent over a little bit, and then there's a cross through it. So it's the. This is actually a symbol that used to exist in English spelling until we decided it wasn't useful anymore and just got rid of it, even though it would still kind of be useful. But it doesn't really match up with symbols in any other sort of language written with the Roman alphabet, so there you go. But it's this sound, the. The tricky part of this is, so I guess if you want to refer to this, it gets referred to as eth, or you could write that out with and then this symbol, eth, not theta. These two sounds, however, number 23 and number 24, are often confused with each other because they're normally written in English spelling with the exact same notation. So both of these are normally written with a th. Listen closely though. This sound is th, as in thought or think or theme. And this is the sound, as in though or the, or yeah, there's not actually too many words with that, like weather versus ether, weather, ether. You gotta listen closely to the distinction between those. There's vibration at your vocal folds for this one, but there isn't vibration for this one. So try to keep those separate in your mind because that's a common mistake for beginning students of the system to make. Number 25 is sh, like in shot. And we saw that in English there's a wide variety of ways to spell this sound in different English words. The way we're going to spell it or transcribe it consistently in this system is with this symbol. It's sort of like an elongated S because it's kind of similar to the S sound, sh versus s. It's called esh if you want to refer to it as its nickname. And it kind of looks like not only an elongated S, but also if you've studied calculus, it looks like the integral symbol, which kind of means that you're summing over a bunch of things. So it's sort of like the summation. Sure. Let's pretend I didn't make that joke, but that's the sound. Sh. The zh sound, as in vision, is going to be represented with this symbol here. Maybe it kind of looks like the number 3. Maybe it kind of looks like a Z at the top, but then with a curly Q at the bottom. However you want to imagine it, this is how we write it out. It's zh. So this one is sh, and this one is zh. Sh, and then zh. This sound is not super common in English. It's maybe the rarest sound that we have in the language. And it doesn't even come at the beginning of any single word that's sort of native to English. We find it instead in words like vision or pleasure, so on and so forth. And it has a variety of different spellings too. So just keep an eye out for that one. Number 27 is called engma. It is found in words like ring or sing or song or Donkey Kong, that sort of thing. The way we write this one out, it kind of sounds like an N, but the way we write it out is with the N symbol and this little curly Q here at the bottom. So it sort of looks like a combination of the N symbol and then sort of this part of the G, because it's kind of like a combination phonetically of these two sounds as we make them. Fun fact, I grew up as a native speaker of English and, was a competent enough reader and writer of the language, but I didn't know until I started studying phonetics that this was a distinctive sound in English. I just always pronounced the sound here like an N. It was something that changed in my life when I started picking up linguistics textbooks in high school. Go figure. But this is a different sound from eng. This is a different sound from N. So try to think of a minimal pair. It's not easy to come up with one on the top of my head. So whatever, sauna and song, those are two different sounds in the middle there. You don't say sauna or san. You don't say songa or san. You say sauna and song, so on and so forth. I will stop there with that description, but keep that one in mind. It's called engma. The sound at the beginning of a word like chop or cheer or champion, that sort of thing, we normally spell it with a CH in English. It's actually a combination of two phonemes we've seen already. It's a combination of the T and then the esh sound. So if you try to say this one really slowly, you can pick out the fact that these two are this is one sound that kind of consists of two sounds. Like chop, or maybe it's easier when you're kind of leading into it with a vowel like match, so on and so forth. It's a T followed by an esh. And then it's similar to this sound, this phoneme, which is also a combination of these two sounds, the D and the zh, or the edge. And we get this in a word like jot or judge. And maybe you can hear it at the end of the word judge. But you go from judge, or grudge. So it starts with a D and ends in the zh or edge. But those two are usually pronounced right after each other, so it's hard to hear kind of them as two separate sounds. At least we process it mentally as well as one individual phoneme or meaningful sound, which is why we don't pick up on that phonetic combination. I also wasn't aware of that combination until I started studying phonetics either, so if that's a surprise to you, join the club. All right, unfamiliar IPA symbols for vowels. Unfortunately for us, I guess, as students of linguistics, or maybe fortunately because this helps us learn, English has a lot of vowels compared to other languages in the world. If you've learned English as a second language, you're probably already familiar with that there's a lot of kind of subtle distinctions you have to pick up on that maybe your native language does not make. Other languages usually make up for that with distinctions that English does not have, so on and so forth, but this is kind of where English is distinction heavy, I guess you could say. So we have 5 different IPA symbols for vowels, which are going to be new. But the kind of the values they have, the sound values they have, are going to be similar to what the symbols look like in a way. So the sound in a word like bid is kind of similar to that E sound, but we're going to write it with this sort of capital I symbol, but it's a small capital I, and there's, again, no dot at the top. So this is, because it's kind of like a capital I, it's called Cap I. That's its nickname. And it's pronounced as I, like in bid. And you can contrast that with bed. So this is bid, hit, kick, sick, so on and so forth. This is bed, head, dead, whatever, web, so on and so forth. It's the sound. And to represent that sound in our system, we use this Greek letter epsilon, which is the nickname of this guy. So it's kind of a curly Q E, maybe like a 3 turned around. And it's, again, the sound we get in a word like bed. Bid, bed. The sound in a word like bad, is called a couple of different things. Usually it's called ash. The way it's written is also with an old symbol that used to exist in the English language, and which would, again, still be useful, but we just got rid of it, I guess, to match up with the other languages. It's kind of an A, or half of an A letter combined with half of an E letter smushed together in the middle. So it's called ash because that's the sound at the beginning of the word ash. It's also in bad or sad or happy, so on and so forth. It's also sometimes called digraph, which means like 2 letters, because it kind of looks like the A and the E squashed together. So that's how you'd write it out. And we get it in words like this. So bid, bed, bad. We also have the vowel as in foot or book or cook, so on and so forth. That one's nickname is upsilon because it also looks like a Greek letter that goes by that name. It's pronounced You can kind of maybe imagine it looks like an upside down horseshoe, so maybe it's good luck, like the vowel in good luck, not the vowel in luck, but in good. And it's written like this. It kind of sounds like an oo, not quite, which is why the symbol kind of looks like an oo. Lastly, I'll mention one that you may have heard of before, even if you haven't studied linguistics. It's called schwa, which is a name, again, borrowed from German this time rather than Greek. And it's kind of an upside down, well, yeah, it's basically an upside down E letter. And we get it in context like about. It's a sound like kind of that hesitation pause that we have in English. It's schwa. It's in terms of its quality, but usually when we actually pronounce it in English, it goes by really quickly, so it's kind of hard to hear. About. That's schwa. There's a few more diphthongs. There is the I sound, which we normally write with this symbol in English, in a word like bide or hide or sky or whatever. The way we're going to write it out is with this kind of typewriter A at the beginning and then the yod symbol at the end. I'm not going to get super picky if you want to use that other symbol. It's more rounded here, but the actual vowel here, according to the IPA, is this symbolized by this script A. In order to not confuse you, I'm not going to specify what the distinction between those two ahs are. I'm just going to mention this is ah, e, I, I'd, I'd. Likewise, this one is ow, as in a word like bowed, or proud, or hound, or loud. This is, again, the script A at the beginning with the W because it's a diphthong at the end, but it's ow, 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 ow. That hurt sort of sound. The diphthong in a word like boyd, or toy, or coy, or what have you, oil is another example where it's a little bit, there's something funny going on there, but the way we represent it is with an O followed by a yod. So before we saw the O-W diphthong, O, this is an oi diphthong, boy, toy, so on and so forth. So those are 3 more diphthongs we have to worry about in English. And then I'm also going to mention one more vowel that's in the textbook, if you have it and have been following along with it, it's this symbol, which we call the wedge. Some people call it the caret, like C-A-R-A-T. I'm not really going to call it anything in this class because it's very close to the vowel schwa. It's basically again, like in bud. And it's actually so close to schwa that it's not worth your trouble at the moment to try to figure out what the difference is between the two. At the beginning of the next lecture, I might try playing you a Bruce Springsteen song where he makes a distinction, but over YouTube, my efforts to play Bruce Springsteen songs in my linguistics lectures have all been caught by the copyright catcher in YouTube, so I'm not even going to bother with it tonight. It's already getting late and dark, but I will say, sorry about getting off the point a little bit there, but we're not going to use this particular symbol in this class. You shouldn't worry about it. But if you are worried about it, it sounds like an like in bud or hug, so on and so forth. Whenever you do encounter that sound, I want you to use the schwa symbol to transcribe it. I don't care if it comes in bud or hug or about or wherever. Officially, the way this is supposed to work in English is that the schwa appears in unstressed syllables and the wedge appears in stressed syllables, but we're just going to use schwa across the board. And if you want to get better at this distinction, you can take 341, my intro phonetics course, afterwards. So just stick with schwa for this class and you'll be fine. Since I mentioned stress there at the tail end, I will just give you a few notes about stress. So stress is a property of English whereby it makes a syllable sound more prominent than other syllables in its environment. Basically, you're putting more effort into pronouncing that syllable. You make all the sounds in it clearer. Generally, you use a higher pitch of your voice when you produce it. You create more intensity when you say it, so on and so forth. It's a little bit longer. There's a lot of different things to go into it to make it just sound louder or more prominent to a listener when you produce that symbol or syllable. You can denote stress with an accent over the vowel in the stress syllable. This is actually not exactly the way the IPA does it, but since the textbook does it, we'll just go with that. So we have a word like contrast.
Contrast. Contrast.
Which is a noun, and then the version of the same sequence of sounds with the stress on the second syllable is a verb.
Contrast.
Which is why we have to worry about transcribing this in English, because we have basically a minimal pair here where the stress is on the first syllable for the noun.
Contrast.
And stress is on the second syllable for the verb.
Contrast.
You might notice it's not exactly a minimal pair here. We have an aspirated stop at the beginning of this stressed syllable, an aspirated stop at the beginning of this stressed syllable, but not at the beginning of the unstressed syllables. And the vowel kind of changes a little bit here too. So this is an ah.
Contrast.
And it becomes more like a schwa in this one.
Contrast.
You might notice it goes by really quickly. It's kind of hard to hear that, in fact. So a few other things change, but they kind of are tied in with stress. Usually sounds are clearer when we produce stressed syllables than unstressed syllables. We get something similar for this example of however you pronounce that word. If it's a noun,
proceeds.
It's too loud for some reason. But if it's a noun, it has stress on the first syllable.
Proceeds.
And if it's a verb, it has stress on the second syllable.
Proceeds.
Yeah. So hopefully you've noticed this is the way we're going to transcribe this, with this little strike mark over the vowel in the middle of the stressed syllable. So if it's over a diphthong, like in O in proceeds, then just put the stress mark over the first vowel, basically, in that diphthong. Otherwise, just whatever vowel happens to be there.
Proceeds.
And again,
proceeds.
That's a minimal pair, so we have to transcribe that distinction. Okay, lastly, I will mention that we're done with the system. That's all the symbols you need to know. You do, however, if you know how to write English, which you probably do for this class, you do know other symbols which we're not going to use. So you know the C, the X, the Q, and the Y symbol. Don't use these. They're never appropriate for English. The ones I tend to see most often are the C and the Y in transcriptions. Don't use those. Don't use this to represent the ya sound or the yod sound. Use the J symbol for that one. Don't use C for anything, whether you think it's a K or an S sound. They mean different sounds that are in other languages, but we don't have phonemically in English. So hit all your targets with the first 38 symbols on stress, and then don't be misled by these guys, and you should be okay with phonetic transcription. And like I said, there's not that many slides to describe the system itself, but it takes a while to kind of get the handle of it, so we need to do a number of practice exercises for this in order to learn how to use this system. So we'll do a fair number of those next, just to get the hang of it, and then we'll move on to a description of exactly what's going on in our mouths when we produce these various sounds. And we'll find that there are some patterns there which exhibit themselves in terms of the rules we need to learn in order to be competent speakers of a language. And those rules are called phonology, so we're leading up already to the next unit as we get into the details of this unit. Okay, that's all I've got for now. And like I said, the best way to learn this, well, the only way to learn it is to memorize it, but one way that's really good for helping you do that is to do lots of practice exercises with it. So we'll work on that next time. See you then.